day and welcome to today's conversation. The Conversation podcast today has a special guest. He's an entrepreneur, a TV station owner, is a pastor, but he's also a veteran journalist. Today I'm privileged to host Kennedy Mambwe, Pastor Kennedy Mambwe. Good day.
Ambassador, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for thinking of inviting me. I've followed the podcast since you started. It's a very enriching platform. I hope you can evolve it into a TV or a radio station because you have got rich content, and I think this is what the nation needs.
Today, I'm putting you on the spot. You are good at interviewing people. Today, you're on the other side. Like I said, you're a veteran journalist, but many people may not know. Again, you are a pastor. Again, many people may not understand. Then they see you as a critic on TV. Again, they may not understand. Let's start. Who is Kennedy Mambwe?
Well, Kennedy Mambwe, first and foremost, is a Zambian. Proud Zambian citizen. Born in the land of freedom fighters, Chinsali. So the blood of the Lenshina, the blood of Kenneth Kaunda, the blood of Simon Monsaka Pwepwe, and all of them runs deep within me. I was born in a family of 11. Of course, now we are 10. Very, modest background. And I went to Lubwa Basic School in Chinsali. And across the Kolwe stream, I went to Kenneth Kaunda Secondary School, where I did my grade 10 to grade 12. And after that, that's when I thought of migrating to Lusaka like everybody else. So predominantly, I'm a villager from Chinsali, and much of the formation of who I am was from that perspective and all the historical perspective that I observed and that happened. As you know, Kaunda was our founding father. And he used to come to Chinsali, to Lubwa in particular. And I used to belong to that church, the United Church of Zambia. So every other time that Kaunda would come, and I would be there as a young boy, and I was really beginning to feel some things forming up in my mind as to where I should be going when I grow up.
We can't trivialize Chinsali in the history of our country. It's like a spring of freedom for this country. Like you stated, the major names in this country in helping found this country, the first form of welfare association, which was like a trade union, was founded in Akonde area, but from people that came from Chinsali. The founding fathers, Simon Monsaka Pwepwe, Kenneth David Kaunda, and others came from Chinsali. One of the first missions, Lubwa, where you were privileged to have gone to, is from Chinsali. And then the unspoken issue, the Lenshina uprising, where over 1,500 people were lost. It's Zambia's, I think, first massacre. So you were born in a very, very special place. Did you feel the history? Did you feel that sense of history of Chinsali?
So when I was young, all of these things never used to make sense until much later when I kind of began to develop a mindset of analyzing the context within which I was brought up. Within the Lubwa mission, you go up the hill where the Reverend Chulu and Reverend Colombo and them used to live. You go and read it, built 1904 or 18 what. The Lubwa itself, the mission is built 18 this and whatnot. I'm like, why am I in such an area with this kind of a history? And I began to take keen interest. And fate would have it that my grandfather would then become a preacher, a lay preacher within the Lubwa mission, United Church of Zambia. So all of this now became like, a center pivot for me to galvanize who I am, and the history that surrounds me, and who I should become in future. Because now what happens is, as we are there, every Christmas, Dr. Kaunda would come to celebrate his Christmas from Chinsali, the resting place.
Because Dr. Kaunda, other than that, he had a special holiday home in Chinsali called Shambalakali.
Correct.
His father founded Lubwa Mission.
Correct.
And both the graves for the father and his mother lay
right
there.
In front of the church.
Right in front of the church. So I was just, to our dear viewers that may not understand, why Dr. Kaunda would frequently come for his Christmas holidays and spend them in Chinsali.
And interestingly, now that you're mentioning about the resting place of Dr. Kaunda's parents, right in that graveyard facing the church is where my grandfather is resting.
He's also okay.
He's buried
okay.
there. So you can understand the connection and the richness of all of this. Now, for me, really what formed the upbringing as far as beginning to understand the historic context of Chinsali was the fact that every Christmas as Kaunda would come and I am there as a young boy, I began to see, Kaunda landing in a football pitch at Lubwa Basic. And those days there were cars we called the Belmont. And the Belmont would pick him and the Silene would go, and everyone, literally Lubwa Chinsali would come to a standstill when Kaunda is there. The son of the soil is back home. And so we would rush into church. And what really for me, the most attractive of all of that was the jostling up and about of journalists. And I see journalists getting close to power, shoving a mic in front of the face of the most revered president, and I'm looking from afar as a young boy, dirty and, hungry and all of that, and I'm like, what manner of profession is this that brings you this close to power? I think when I grow up, I want to be like one of those who puts a camera in front of the president, who the only species in my view was not being stopped by the bodyguards from getting closer
to the president
and take pictures. And I said, that is what I want to become. And ambassador, when I was growing up, that was the only conviction. Forget about mathematics and geography. I needed to know
how to become a journalist.
And my focus much more was on English, and all of this in literature and history became my favorite. And so it was not surprising that when I came to Lusaka and looked for a place to go, it was just two places. It's either University of Zambia for mass communication or Evelyn Horn College for journalism. University of Zambia at the time, that was 1997, that's when I was in college at Evelyn Horn College. University of Zambia was the only that was offering mass comm degree courses, and it was highly competitive. I couldn't make it, so I found my way into Evelyn Horn College, and that was my first exposure to journalism training, having been informed by what I experienced as a young child in Chinsali.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's transition. You have come to Lusaka. You are now training as a journalist. Let's discuss your period of training up to your professional career and life.
I believe that every person you meet them for a purpose. I believe in the word of God that says the footsteps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord. When I came into Lusaka, there were many churches to go to. By that time, I'd transitioned from UCZ into Pentecostal Assemblies of God. So when I came to Lusaka, I ended up in a place called George Compound and much later Matero. So that's my place where I stayed when I came to Lusaka. So I looked for a church, Pentecostal Assemblies of God. I found a church in George Compound called, it was called Mount Zion, but it was Pentecostal
Assemblies.
It was pastored, before I went there, it was pastored by a pastor called Pastor Kampinda, who passed on, and then it was given to Bishop Chirambo. Bishop Chirambo became my pastor, and the family welcomed me. I somewhat became part of their family. His sons were my brothers, were my friends. And so what was most interesting about this, new family that I found was the fact that the wife to my pastor was a lecturer at Evelyn Horn College. So in my conversation with her son, she overheard me saying, I really want to become a journalist, but I've been failing to get a place at Evelyn College. Without me knowing, she went and talked to the head of journalism at Evelyn College, said, I've got a son who wants to start journalism, but it doesn't seem to, be getting, the favors that he's looking for. Yeah. Can you create space for him? The intake that I was in was way advanced. I think I was late by 6 months. But she fought, and she came and said, Kennedy, tomorrow you are starting school. I said, wow. How? She said, yes, we are starting school at Evelyn. I spoke to the head of department, you go and see such and such. And lo and behold, I showed up, and I was welcomed, and that's how I became part of that class. So the difficult I had was now to play catch up for all the months,
6 months.
Yes, that I had missed. But I found some good friends, like my good friend Lucy Kaonga, who is, I think she's a station manager at one of the radio stations in Chingola, Kokoliko or something like that. She became a good friend of mine and said, here are the notes, and I would copy. So in that class, I was with the likes of Lusubilo Gondwe, who is a veteran journalist, also
broadcaster at Radio Phoenix.
I was with the likes of Ingutu Imanje, who is now a counsel. So that is that's my intake. And after I finished my studies with Evelyn College, I started working as a freelance journalist, and much of my work was with Reuters, news agents, and Bloomberg. So not so much with the local media times and all of that, but I had a weekly column in the Post newspaper. I can't remember what we called it, but I had a weekly column in the Post. Ambassador, you also realize that when I worked for as a journalist for some years, I realized that I needed to upgrade myself.
Yeah.
I needed to upgrade my studies. And I applied to go and study for a master's degree in journalism still in the United Kingdom. As a self-sponsored student, didn't have money. I just had the passion. But I knew I needed to upgrade myself. When I looked at how much I needed to pay, how much it was going to cost me, 40,000 pounds for 2 years to start a master's, and I didn't have any money. And then I didn't have the ticket. There was an organization called Media Trust Fund. Beston Ngonga was the executive director at the time.
Yeah, former managing director at Times of Zambia.
Yes. I wrote to him, I said, listen, I'm looking for sponsorship for an air ticket to go and study. Here is my acceptance letter at City University in London. And he said to me, we can't fund you. Maybe because at that time, just to back up a little bit, at that time, Ambassador, in the year 1999, I became the first journalist to form what we called online news channel, so to speak. It was called the Information Dispatch Online.
Oh, the Information Dispatch Online. Yes.
Information Dispatch was the first online news platform.
Outlet. Yeah.
And we used to operate from a business cafe at that hotel, the hotel near Pamosi.
Southern Sun, Holiday Inn at the time.
Yes. Now, there used to be a cafe where Biznet, a man by the name of Paul Gosson, used to operate that time, the internet was very fresh and new in Zambia. Yeah. So there were very few,
places
internet
you could
cafes.
go for. You had to go to the British Council or at BusyNet or Zamnet.
Yes, he embraced us. We had an organization called IICD, International something for Development in Netherlands, that said, we will like to help you with some rentals and paying of internet so you can keep the information flowing.
So what were you doing with the Information Dispatch?
So with the Information Dispatch, we formed a small team. of the likes of Gideon Tole, Kasonde Kasolo, myself, and a few others, we would collect news. And instead of news, you're waiting, that time you wait for the Post, for the Times of Zambia to report it, or you have to wait for ZNBC or Phoenix to report at 13. Now, for us, what we used to do, you collect news, you break it through that, channel called information dispatch. So we were saying instant news. So we were breaking news instantly. Now, that became a very popular, because in 2001, Chiluba, was vying for
the third term. There was an attempt for a third term, yes.
And we, for the Zambians in the diaspora, we became a very famous,
reliable channel of source of news.
Yes, for them to hear what's happening, back home. Okay, and I will say some things that I've never disclosed. Some things, in the course of.
That's the beauty of the conversation.
Of duty, what happened to me. And as you said, people must understand my passion for journalism and where I am coming from. So I am running the information dispatch. By the way, it is now what is called Lusaka Times.
Yeah.
Because I exited, and the people that believed in its potential embraced it, and it's still there. Lusaka Times is what I started as information dispatch. Yeah. back in the years
1999.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now look at how audacious I was as a young journalist. Very naive. 2001, President Chiluba is planning to run for a third term. It was very tense. Now, I'm going to say some things in my course of journalism that I've never said publicly.
Yeah.
I am working on a Sunday, and because the information dispatch was very popular with the audience in the diaspora, I received an email from some gentleman called Yusuf something, okay? That there's a time, Ambassador, when the president was out of the country for over a month, and people were questioning, where is the president? The presidency was quiet as to where the president was. The cabinet was quiet as to where President Chiluba was. And here is a young, naive journalist. I get information that the president is not in the country and has not come back.
He's not available.
He's not available. He's in a foreign country, and I was told he's in France. He's in France because he was there with the head of intelligence, okay? And the head of intelligence was carrying hard cash in dollars. And so he's been arrested by the French, government. That's why the president cannot come, because he's fighting hard to have the head of intelligence released. Then he can come back. Now, I was very confused because this information was very delicate, was very sensitive, and I didn't have the expertise that I have now as a journalist.
To say, how do I verify this?
How do I verify this information? It's in the public interest. Our president, yes, has not been back for this 1 month. It's been a long time. So, but how do I verify? And guess what? In my naivety, I live where I was operating from, at Southern Sun, and I take a walk to the Red Brick, which is the headquarters of the intelligence.
The Zambia Intelligence Security Services in this country.
In this country. And with that naivety, I find a gentleman wearing a red beret and green, and I say, excuse me, my name is Kenneth Mambwe. I'm a journalist from the Information Dispatch. And I produced my ID from Zanis.
Yeah.
And it says Information Dispatch Managing Editor Kenneth Mambwe. Then he said, how can I help you? I said, I just want you to confirm. Is it true that the President Chiluba,
is out of the country?
Is out of the country, and the reason he's not back is because the head of intelligence at that time was Mr. Xavier Shiong, has been arrested. Is it true? And the gentleman just said, I am coming, wait here. And I stood there at the front gate of the Red Brick, and my heart told me, you are in double trouble. You are in trouble. Run for your life. I started running in the direction of Skanze camp. Now, there is what they call friendly forces. So Skanza camp predominantly is
It's
a
for the
camp for
police.
the police. So when the policemen saw me being now, you look back, there was a green Land Rover with a white top, with the red beret, officers from the intelligence
Looking for you.
looking for me now, driving behind me with guns in the air, and the police in front of me. And as I said, I'm saying this publicly for the first time. It's something I've curbed. But I want people to know my passion of journalism, where it comes from, and what I have gone through.
It's a conversation. You don't have to apologize.
I know. So when the police saw I'm being chased by a friendly force, I was attacked by the police and I went flying. Literally, by the time I was landing, a boot was on my neck, and I was bruised and kicked, and I was lifted, and they told me to lie in that, Land Rover facing down. And they drove me back to the red brick with my face down. And I was locked into some dark room, not too far from the main entrance. There's maybe it's an interrogation room. That's where I was kept. And the people disappeared, and I think they were making some national alarms and said there's a young man we have arrested, but we have checked him. He's
a journalist.
He's a journalist, we've verified. And I think after some time, someone told them, yes, we know him, release him. And that's how I was released. I disappeared. Now that was very dark. I disappeared, and I was staying in Kabwata, some flights there. I disappeared into the dark, and I went home. I called my fiancée then, who is my wife now, and I said, please come, I've been beaten, I've been bruised. And she asked for permission from my mother, they let her come. And, she said, I want you to stop this. This is not the kind of job you should be doing. Look, it's too early for you to be facing these kind of, things.
What did you do with that information? Did you later have it published?
No. So what I said to the gentlemen when they released me, I said to them, I will not publish this information. I'm a journalist, law-abiding, and I believe in the principles of journalism.
In fact, that's why you are calling it naive. That's why you walked over to the intelligence to try to verify the information.
Yes.
It's one of the ethics. We receive information. You have to ensure that before it's published, it's verifiable. So you were doing a verification process.
I was doing a due diligence that landed me in trouble.
Yeah.
Now, here, I told them, I said, look, I will not publish this information if you think it's not credible enough. So I gave them my word. And that information was never published until now on the podcast.
But did you verify if, for example, the president was out of the country for that period?
The president was definitely out of the country for that period, but here is what happened. After the passage of time, and I think this was about after maybe a week or two, a white Land Rover was sent to come and pick me up. And the gentleman who came to pick me up said some things that I didn't know what it meant. They just said, Delta One wants to see you. And I said, Delta One, what's that? So I complied. But at that time, I told my journalist, and I said, look, guys, I am going this way. If I don't come, if I don't show up, if anything happens, I want you to know this is what's at play.
Yeah.
At least now I had to confide in some of the journalists I was working with at the time. And so I was whisked in that brand new white Land Rover into the red brick. And they opened the escalator, or the elevator rather. And I was walked into that elevator, and we went all the way to some floor. When the door to the elevator opened, guess where I was ushered? I was ushered right into the presence of the head of intelligence, Mr. Sevechung.
Yeah.
I was seeing him for the first time in person. He stood up, came warmly, welcomed me and shook my hand. And I was young, he's an elderly person.
Yeah.
The respect he gave me, I was melting with admiration of the professionalism. And he said, Mr. Mambwe, welcome. My name is Sevechung. I just called, to apologize personally for how you were treated when you were investigating a
A
story
story.
as a journalist.
Mm.
My heart inside was melting, and I was like, wow, these guys are professionals.
Yeah.
I admire their work ethic. To be invited by a man I was told was arrested in some foreign country. And he said to me, I like the fact that you didn't publish that story. I know if it was, but back then the biggest newspaper was the Post.
Yeah.
He said to me, I know if it was the Post, they would have gone
To run
ahead
it.
to publish. But the fact that you came, I just thought I needed to come and apologize for how we treated you.
You should have asked him, DG, but by the way, were you arrested?
No ways. My heart there still.
No,
was
you
like,
were just shocked that
I was very shocked.
you were ushered in his presence.
Yes, at the
and-
10 of events.
Yeah.
But then
yeah.
as a journalist, at the back of my mind, I'm like, if there was no truth to all of this, why would...
The dramatic...
why would I be actually... why do I find myself in this? But it was a very cordial conversation, and they said, I just wanted to know you, and I wanted you to know me, and if you need anything, let us know. I said, no problem. My heart was like, get me out of this place. And after I was shaking a few hands, and he ushered me out to the staircase, and out I went. That was my baptism into journalism. I can never forget that. And after that, I said I needed to go and upgrade myself. And you recall I earlier talked about how I went to the Media Trust Fund to look for sponsorship for an air ticket, and they said we can't fund that. And so Mr. Beston Ngonga told me, write and ask for funding for maybe equipment, or a laptop, or and then once we raise that funding, and then maybe you see what you can do
to convert it
to your air ticket. But at least in our books, it will show that we supported the journalist, an upcoming media house, with this. And true to his suggestion, I did an application, and they helped me, and I got an air ticket. Ambassador, by the time I was landing in London at Heathrow Airport, that was my first time to go to the United Kingdom. I was landing there with only £500, and I was going to study a course worth 40,000 of pounds, millions in kwacha at the time.
True. Even now.
Why did I do that? I'm a man of faith. My upbringing, where I was brought up, was a very difficult environment. But by the grace of God, God saw me through college. God saw me through my first exposure to journalism practice. And I believe that same God who has brought me safe this far surely will be faithful enough to take me to London. No relative, no one I knew in London, but I landed. And I was received in the halls of residence at City University. This is your room. I look, it has got everything. There's a bed, there's a table, there's where to cook from, and all of that. But I have to be paying per week, the rentals. How will I survive? And I had 500. Within a week, my £500 was
Gone.
And for the first time, I received a letter from the lawyers who were manning the halls of residence that you haven't paid your rentals, we're going to prosecute you or to sue you, or you need to go out. I'm like, Lord, how do I survive in a foreign country? Then I remembered that when I was leaving Zambia, someone I used to go to church with gave me dry carpenter, dry beans, and all of those, and said, go and look for my brother in London. Here is his number. Before then, I was hesitating because I didn't even know
Your way.
But finally, I realized for me to survive, I need to look for this person, who now is a brother and a friend. I contacted him and I said, listen, I am Kenneth Mambwe. I'm here for my studies at City University, but your brother gave me kandolo, beans, and all of those. Please come to such and such a place in central London, come and collect. But for me, my prayer was, God, when he comes, please, may this be my survival.
Yeah.
And he came. We greeted, and I introduced myself, and I said, here is your dried consignment. And then I said, before you carry this, I want you to know, read this letter. I have been saved with an eviction notice. And so, you have to help me. I don't know anyone here. Then he said, okay, give me up to tomorrow. Let me go and talk to my brother and my sister. We'll see what we can do. He went, and true to his word, the following day he drove back and said, I've spoken to my brother and my sister. We can accommodate you for now while you're finding
your feet.
Your feet. Hey, God is merciful. They accommodated me. I became part of the family. And in between now, I started working as a waiter.
Yeah.
To raise money to sponsor for my studies.
Wow.
And one of the most memorable days, Ambassador, is that the agents where I was affiliated as a waiter sent me to the Mayor of London's office. Ken Livingstone was the Mayor of London at the time. And he was having a press conference. And the agents said, go and be the one to cover, to provide tea and coffee and all of this to the journalists who will be covering the press conference of Mayor Ken Livingstone. And I went there, and I stood by the corner waiting for the mayor to finish speaking. In my heart, I'm like, I'm a journalist, and what am I doing serving tea? But something in me said, look, you need to go through this. It doesn't mean you're not a journalist. You are a journalist.
Yeah.
You are here to upgrade yourself. So go through this phase. It's just a phase. It will come to an end. I served. They finished the conference. I served the journalist and whatnot. I just pretended like I don't know. But in my mind, I was even saying the story, the intro for this story would be like this. But anyway, I was there to serve tea and coffees. And to cut the long story short, I braved myself. But it was very intense for me to remain.
To be both at work and at school.
Yes. I dropped off City University, and I went now into full-time working to raise money. And I said to myself, when I have raised enough money, I will then change the university because they will not accept me to go back. And fortunately, when I raised a bit of money, remember, I wasn't paying rentals at a certain time. So they gave me quite a buffer to raise a bit of money. And then I applied for another course at University of Westminster, still Masters in Journalism. And they accepted me. But what was very shocking is they do not accept full-time international students. No, they don't accept international students on part-time.
You have to be a full-time student.
You have to be a full-time student as an international student. What was shocking for me, they didn't ask, are you Zambian? Do you have a permanent residence? What? No, they accepted me as a part-time student studying journalism and as a part-time. So that I could continue working as a waiter to fund my studies. And I did that, and I finished the day I was writing my dissertation. I already bought a ticket. I didn't want to stay in London
any further,
because for me, that was not my environment. My passion was to come back home and contribute to the development of my nation. The day I submitted my dissertation, the following day, I jumped on a flight. Now, because I didn't have money, I needed to look for the cheapest flight. I had to look for a flight around Christmas. When
the entire world is traveling.
Actually, they're not traveling because there are very few people. It's holiday time.
Oh, yeah.
So the flights become a bit cheaper. But for me, it's not a direct flight. I jumped on a flight that went first to Rome in Italy, from Italy to Addis Ababa, and from Addis Ababa to Nairobi, from Nairobi to Malawi, and then
Lusaka.
It took me like 3 days to arrive. Why? Because I just needed a cheap flight. I've been a fighter the rest of my life, so I am here having a conversation with the ambassador to just tell my story. So from the journalism journey, that's where I am coming from. And when I came, I went straight into the practice of public relations.
Okay.
We formed a PR agency called ZK Advertising. At the time, Celtel was the biggest
mobile
telecom.
company.
And they had an agent that was coming out of Dar es Salaam, which was given the contract to manage the PR and advertising side of Celtel, and that needed to open up offices across Africa. And so I was privileged to be hired as the first public relations manager for Celtel, managing Celtel as a brand, but from the agent's perspective. And I did that for a bit, but because Celtel saw the value that I was bringing to the brand, Mr. Norman Moyo, the marketing director at the time, said to me, Kennedy, why don't you come and join us?
Join us officially.
Officially as part of the marketing in Celtel. I said, by all means. So I transitioned from being a journalist to becoming a PR person, and now to becoming a marketing person. So I became a marketing services manager for Celtel. I took over from a dear brother and colleague, Chris Puta, at the time. And so I became now fully fledged, working with the PS Evans Muhanga, who later went to
Zamtel?
To Sierra Leone. As director. So when he left,
Under Celtel.
So worked with them, and we drove the brand until we rebranded Celtel to Zen. It was after we rebranded Celtel to Zen that I left to now practice PR consultants, which I was doing for a number of firms. So, but then just when I was getting entrenched in practicing PR consultants on my own, the PF, I'm trying to recall the events. Zamtel had been sold to Lap Green of Libya by the MMD government of President Rupiah Banda. And so when MMD sold Zamtel to Lap Green of Libya, they were looking for a strong PR person who could help, because remember that time Zamtel was yellow. It was a lethargic brand. It was regarded for the old Madalas, and we needed to rebrand and revamp it so that it can be competitive, like MTN. And so I was privileged to be one of the first to be hired. I became the PR person for Zamtel, working with Amon Jere and Eve Banda and all of those. And so we rebranded Zamtel, but when there was change of government, 2011, the PF needed to hand back,
President Michael Sata, I think, did an inquiry and ordered that
it must be reversed.
The transaction should be reversed on account that it was illegal. And he did a unilateral decision where Lap Green were removed, and Zamtel reverted to the old status. Of course, then there was a legal process after that. But Zamtel came back as a state-owned enterprise.
Zamtel came back. So now, as a PR and communications manager, I was at the thick of communication to manage that delicate transition.
Both internally and outside.
Internally and externally. So it was a very delicate, but it also gave me a lot of exposure, engagement, stakeholder management and all of that, because you're working with politicians, you're working with investors, foreign investors, and all of these things, and media, and so on and so forth. So it was a very good place to be, for me at least, to understand how politics work, how decisions are made, how to manage delicate situations and transitions and all of this. And I was but for me, my practice of PR is not that I should be the one in front. I would craft all these statements and let my bosses be the ones. So most people don't know that I've been at that level, because I was
Always in the background.
Always in the background, making things happen and making my bosses look good.
Yeah.
And so that was what happened to me until at the time when I was in Zamtel, ambassador, is when the idea to start a TV station was birthed. Because it was at that time that now the digital migration framework was being rolled out, and I didn't even know, but I stumbled into it. And I came to realize that, oh, there is a digital migration, framework that the government is promoting, and any Zambian can start a TV station. And I said, why wouldn't I be part of the history to, benefit from such a wonderful development? I think I would like to be a part of, but the challenge was, how do you start a TV station? I did my own survey and study. I realized it's a lot of money that was required. But I consulted my wife, who became a partner in KBN.
The TV station project.
And I said to her, my friend, look, we've been together, we've built this and that and that. We have a little bit of somewhere to start from. Can we sacrifice some of this and invest in a TV station? She said, are you sure? I said, look at ZNBC, look at Prime TV, look at maybe, just maybe in future. Let's try this. And she said, not a problem. Fortunately for me, I was in gainful employment at Zamtel. I had a good salary as a manager, car, personal to ward, and all of these things taken care of. So I didn't have enough demand on my extra income. So when we registered the brand KBN TV, I would get my salary literally from what I was earning at Zamtel to go and pay people who were working at
KBN.
At KBN.
Wow.
But in terms of buying equipment, we had to sell this and sell that, put our house on mortgage and so on and so forth. And then that is what we used.
The project has come at great personal sacrifice.
At a great personal sacrifice. And that's why sometimes when we are doing what we're doing as KBN, and we have taken an editorial stance of how we should project the discourse in the nation, because we believe maybe what is in public interest is this and that. And when I hear people say, when PF were in power, we were one of the very few platforms where the UPND would come. The Vice President, her Honor, Madam Narumango, was my regular on State of the Nation. And all of them. You recall when Vakwetu was being run by my friend and the older brother, Norman Chipakpaku, and my brother Elias Mwensha, who was at the time in
Canada.
In Canada. They asked me, look, we have Vakwetu TV, how can we get some of this feed and plug it on KBN? I said, by all means, look, you are discussing things that concern the nation. So we would get to Vakwetu, we signed an MOU, the podcast of Vakwetu, we plug it into a mainstream KBN TV, and we were a darling station for the UPND. I hosted the president himself on State of the Nation virtually from his community house for over 1.5 hours on State of the Nation. KBN was a darling of the UPND in opposition. And the PF, of course, they knew that we were not funded by the UPND. They never called us a project of the UPND, of course, because they had all the information on their disposal, that they know how much of a sacrifice it was to start a TV station by myself and my wife and my family. And so it is very shocking today when I hear the same TV station that benefited the UPND. Today the discourse has changed. Oh, this PF Kantemba, or this PF funded project. They do not know at what sacrifice, a great sacrifice, we built the brand KBN over the past 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's very painful for me, to hear people who are actually supposed to be saying, you know what, let's support that. Maybe through economic empowerment, let's find a way of supporting media, because media is hardly supported. They would support agriculture, they would support everything but media. And yet media, everyone wants to use media to advance their cause and so on and so forth. So this is where we are. And KBN has never been a PF outfit, has never been a UPND outfit. It has been a people's outfit. It was born out of conviction that...
and because of national interest.
Because of national interest. For me and my team, whatever we would do, at the center of it all must be national interest. And that is why, this is where I draw my strength from when you say I would perhaps be a critic of the government. I'm not a critic of the government. I'm only asking questions. What you are deciding to do and what you are doing, does this benefit the nation, or does it benefit you and your family and your clique? So when we ask those tough questions, we are not being personal. We are asking, you asked for a vote so that you can run the affairs of the nation. The Zambian people deposited their trust in you. Why are you betraying their trust? And I have a whole catalog of things that I feel the UPND government has negated its commitment, has gone back, has backpedaled on its commitment to the Zambian people. There is a whole list of things I can talk about on this podcast or any other day. And when we do this, Ambassador, for me personally, speaking as a Zambian, it's because I love Zambia, I love this government, I love any other leader. And the space where the media occupy is a space that must promote dialogue, is a space that must promote free expression, freedom of expression, and we must never be scared. I personally, I am never scared, as long as I'm within the confines of the law, as long as I am doing what is right for the nation. At the end of it all, it must benefit the nation. I take great exception to the ill-informed cadres who will always attack and call me a fake pastor who has been supported by the PF. Show me the money of the PF. Show me when anyone gave me money.
Yeah.
No.
Well, before we come to the critics, the praise singers are not critics, because their criticism is not founded in truth, it's founded in malice. So you are a pastor, and your young brother is also a pastor, Emmanuel. Just tell us about your journey. I know you are a born-again, Bible-believing man, but are you a lay pastor? Did you study pastoral work? How did you become a pastor? How are you a pastor? Are you running a church? Just speak to that. Because that's the other life people don't know.
Yeah.
We have now walked with you on the journey of journalism and journalism practice to PR practice, your consultancy. Tell us about your journey as a pastor, and if you're running any church, then we transition to reviewing how this country is being run by going through the lenses of our previous presidents up to the current one. Right.
Ambassador, I was privileged to be brought up in a family that fears God and loves God. Our parents didn't have much to give us, but I really am grateful to God for what they gave us. They gave us the fear of God. They gave us the values of life, respect for the elders, respect for others, and the secret of coexistence. That's why for me, because of my upbringing, I have never looked at any Zambian in the lens of where they come from, for instance. I have friends, I am married to a beautiful Lost woman, because for me, where one comes from has never been an issue. So as a young person, my family really brought us up well in a Christian home, first of all in the United Church of Zambia. But when we were grown up enough to make our own conscious decisions, we found ourselves in Pentecost Assemblies of God when we became as what is popularly known as born again. Because you realize at a certain place you must recognize that you are a sinner. You are born a sinner. And it's not because of the sprinkling of water on your head that saves you, but by the confession with your mouth and believing in your heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, that he died, was crucified, and on the third day he rose from the dead. And the Bible tells us if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to cleanse us and forgive us of all our unrighteousness. So when you reach that place of making a conscious decision of confessing your sins, and accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior, then you are born again. And that I went through that transition along with my brothers and my sisters. We grew up like that. And as we progressed in our walk with the Lord, we found ourselves knowing the scriptures, knowing what it means to walk with the Lord. knowing that even a believer is just a sinner, but when you sin and you fall, there is sufficient grace. You can go back to the cross and say, Father, I am a sinner, I've fallen short of your glory. And the Lord will embrace you and be with you. So that's what has been for me. And becoming a worshiper, a praise and worship leader, becoming a deacon in church, and serving as a deacon in different areas, in missions, in running cell groups, and so on and so forth. And when I had served for a number of years as a deacon, I think my pastor saw my passion. I never saw passion myself, for the work of God. But I think my pastor saw my passion for the work of God. And we had to undergo internal training, not necessarily going to a Bible college. We had to undergo through a rigorous pastoral training in-house, and later on I was ordained as a pastor. So I'm not just a lay person, and I'm ordained pastor of the gospel. And I worked with my pastor for a number of years, I think up to maybe 13 years or thereabout. And at some point in 2018, I was his assistant pastor, and later on I was the assistant pastor in charge of missions. So we had, and this is Pastor Bruce Msidi, who was my pastor, is the one who ordained me from Mount Zion Christian Center. And under him, I was assisting as the set man of the ministry. And the ministry grew so much that he asked me to be overseer of branch churches.
Okay.
So under me, I had about 7 pastors in different parts of the country that were reporting into me, and then I was reporting back into the senior pastor. But by 2018, I really felt a conviction, and the Lord leading me that my training was complete. I didn't know where the Lord was taking me. At the time, I just understood that I think if the Lord is saying your training here is complete, it means I need to go and start a church. That's what I thought, and that's a conviction that I had. And so I went through the motions of registering a ministry and starting. And for the past 5 years or so, almost at the same time that I was starting KBN, I was also starting a church. So I birthed two projects.
At the same time?
Running a church as well as running a ministry. And I've been running with a church called Dominion Christian Center, where I've been a founder and senior pastor for the past 5 years. But in the same 5 years, there's been a lot of demand on me for the national assignment of running a TV station that has become a big national platform, because KBN TV is on all platforms. It's on DSTV, it's on GoTV, it is on Top Stand, it's on social media. So it is as big as ZNBC in a nutshell, because wherever ZNBC broadcasts through whichever platform, that's where we also broadcast through. So we are a national outfit. So with over 5 years of running the church and the TV station, there's been a huge demand on my life, and I'm failing to split myself evenly and commit. So I have had, in the last 1 month, I've had to take a back seat from church, and I'm focusing more on the national mandate of running a media that can provide balance and embrace divergent views and create a balance that somewhat has been missing over time. So that's where I am. I'm a full commissioned and ordained minister of the gospel, and at the same time I'm a business person. But I really don't look at KBN as a business. I look at it as a calling. Because a business, you are more focused on profit. And if you're focused on profit, some things will be going wrong in the country, and you focus on profit and say, if I talk about this, I will not have business, so I would rather focus on business and not talk about this. But for us at KBN, we regard what God has placed in our hands as a calling. And so we take it with that reverence. And so when we embrace the platform and bring about divergent views, it is because this is as unto the Lord. Not to demonize anyone, but to just ask. There's one thing that I learned as a Christian. We used to wear armbands, WWW. What would Jesus do? WWD. What would Jesus do? Okay? So every time we find ourselves in a situation, we ask ourselves, if it was Jesus running a platform, what would Jesus ask? Will he ask only because the Pharisees want to be addressed in a certain way? No. He would ask them and say, why have you turned my house into a house of thieves? They turned that place where they were selling in the temple. Jesus went there. You know, even John the Baptist called them, you brood of vipers, who has warned you, to run away from the wrath of God that is coming. So when you look at the word of God, and when you look at justice, when you look at fairness, fairness has nothing to do with fear. Justice has nothing to do with fear. And in the eyes of God, Ambassador, it is God that, and this is one thing that politicians must understand. And for me, when I'm doing my job as a journalist, I also mirror it against what the Bible says. The Bible says it is God that raises another and brings another one down. Because promotion comes from God. Do you know that it is God that anointed Saul as king? Yeah. It is the same God that said, I have rejected Saul because he has sinned against me. So when I am doing my job, I say in all of this, God, what must we do and what must be said about this? Not because I love Ambassador and I know him personally. And for me, you'll be surprised, I love everyone in government. And most of them are my personal friends. I have friends who are ministers. Rodney is my friend. We work together in Seotel. We work together in Zamtel. Evans Mwanga is my elder brother and friend and colleague. I worked with him in Seotel. I worked with him in Zamtel. Norman Chipakupako, the PS of Defense, is my elder brother and friend. When I was studying in England, I would go to Scotland and stay with him in his house. I have a lot of friends in this government, but it's not about my personal friendship with them. It is, are you doing the right thing? So when we are questioning as journalists, it's not that we hate you. We are saying, is this what you promised?
Wonderful. Wonderful. Let's transition to the president. This country is now clocked 60 years since its foundation. And there are things we could have done well. There are things we could have done better. Through your views, President Kaunda, what's your review of him? What did he do well? What could he have done better?
So President Kaunda, first of all, we give him credit for having sacrificed a lot. He's one person who would leave his family, going to the bush and traverse the length and breadth of the nation to mobilize for the liberation of our nation so that Zambia can become independent. For that, we give him all the recognition for the efforts that he had put in, together with the team that he worked with. He's one man that even when he constituted the first cabinet, it was reflective of the One Zambia, One Nation, because the first cabinet of Kaunda had everybody from every quarter or section of our society. A teacher, a trade unionist, a Tonga, a Bemba, a Lozi. Everyone had a part, and it really felt like this is a truly, Zambian cabinet, reflecting who we are as a people. President Kaunda built the infrastructure like the Tazama pipeline, the railways and all of those. He built the University of Zambia and so on and so forth. The Kariba Dam. He was big on making sure that the country had infrastructure that is sustainable into the future. But I think that President Kaunda lost it along the way. Lost it along the way when we found ourselves into a one-party state. President Kaunda felt that he has become too big. He became too big that he was uncontrollable, to the extent that he began to say, Kumulu ni Lesa, Panshi ni Kaunda. He began to equate himself to the deity. He became so big and thought that no one can challenge him. That's why I like when President Chiluba came and started his campaign. He said, "Vale miewati Kaunda mulilo, uaikatako apia." I remember him on one of the campaigns when he came to Chinsali. He said, "Ushana lipia mwewe na Chinsali," and we all said no. He said, "Okay." Ile say 1991 ngamwaya mukuvota pankoloko, and President Kaunda didn't believe that he can lose.
Yeah,
that's why he actually didn't see that it was challenging for him to call for an early election because he was too confident. Now he lost the moment. He misread the mood. People had moved on. People were fatigued. People didn't want all of that. They needed a change. And so President Kaunda called for an early election. The rest is history. He lost the following of the people. He became too big, and he felt Zambia and him is phone and SIM card, that no one can dislodge him. But the power of the people, it is the people who need to decide. And I like the fact that for the first time, maybe President Kaunda didn't realize this. When the people were voting against the frog, they really were crying for change. But when he assented to that law that let's go back to multipartism, then the people said, now we can show you that even then we were voting for a frog. And so when the MMD came, people needed to show President Kaunda the door out.
President Chiluba?
President Chiluba started very well under multipartism. And also, I think he tried to create a balance in terms of his cabinet. And one of the things that I liked about President Chiluba is the fact that he was a trade unionist. But he understood the power of professionalism. So you had the professors in his cabinet, you had people who understood business, the Penzas, and all of them. He assembled that cabinet that sort of really gave him the right advice that any president needed at such a critical time. Remember, our economy was on its knees. We were highly indebted. The HIPIC thing and all of that. We were just, and President Chiluba needed to take the nation through all this privatization, okay? And restructure the economy to make it become private sector driven. There was a huge mindset shift. And so that was key. That was necessary. But obviously also towards the end of his presidency, you saw the debt crisis that we found ourselves in as a nation that made it very difficult for the nation to operate and function properly. But because the democracy and the institutions were very strong, and the president allowed others, and in fact, his subsequent successor, Mwanawasa, also saw the need to allow strong, professionals to be involved. We saw this push for debt write-off until at some point, even way past the presidency of President Chiluba, we saw the nation coming back to a place where we had zero debt as a nation. It's on the backdrop of what President Chiluba laid as a strong foundation, where you saw even freedom of expression, freedom of speech. I like President Chiluba also for one thing. When they say a lot of bad things about him, when you hear him call for a press conference, he will not talk about those things. He will talk about the substantive things that people want to hear. We are in a space and time and dispensation where you would have a press conference and people will focus more about what someone said about them and not what they're promising to do for the nation. President Chiluba would just laugh it over. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. You needed a president with thick skin like that. You needed a president that knew how to network and But also maybe the danger for the President Chiluba also, he became too much a darling of the West. And this is the problem that I'm beginning to see with our president wanting to be so much a darling of the West, and you forget, what is needed and the people that put you in power. Your number one commitment, it was the people who voted for you. So President Chiluba had his own strengths, but he also had his own weaknesses.
You've already reviewed Mwanawasa a bit. You can just continue with Mwanawasa.
Yes, President Mwanawasa, that man, not much was expected from him. But I think he proved every single person who was writing him off and said, let me show you. He would say, they are calling me a cabbage, but I am actually a steak. He would joke about what people were saying about
their hostile criticism.
Their hostile criticism. And that's how he watered down all the critics. But the delivery is what really distinguished President Mwanawasa. He fought corruption, and he fought the debt, and all of these things. He was a man who was truly walking the talk. For him, it was not about friendship. Remember, he was just given the presidency by his predecessor. He turned around and said, you have to answer for what you did.
Following.
National interest, not our friendship. But that really, of course, maybe he had his own excesses. It may have been way too much. He needed to moderate that fight so that you do not bring, the office of the former president to a place where it becomes a laughing stock. We need to ring-fence that institution and find a way of preserving the integrity of the former head of state. But also to say, for those who are in power, never do things, to the extent that you think you will stay there forever with impunity. Because at the end of the day, you must be held accountable for what you did, and yet you are abusing the so-called immunity.
Yeah.
So I think what President Mwanawasa did opened our eyes to say, even a president after their office
can be prosecuted.
But also we need to also learn to moderate and say, let's find a way of preserving the institution of the former president and not demonize those that, because sometimes what they are doing, it genuinely is in the interest of the country. But there are some excesses that we have been seeing that they are not speaking of the interest of the country at all. And those should be questioned.
Rupia Bwezanbanda.
Rupia Bwezanbanda, the man, look, the presidents came into his laps, and he is one man who should have run with the presidency with the reverence that it deserved. But I see a president, I'm sorry to say, with due respect to the departed, he was a little bit too casual in the manner that he presided on the affairs of the economy. Again, it is the Zambian people that will make the final decision. Regardless of the fact that he was only in power for perhaps 3 years, the Zambian people said this is not the kind of complexion we are looking for in a leader. And they showed him the door. But for me, he lost it because he just became too playful, and he didn't take the presidency with the reverence that it deserved, and the trust that the Zambian people gave to him. And so he had himself to blame for losing that particular presidency.
Michael Chilufya Sata.
Oh, Michael Chilufya Sata, the man who transformed the face of Zambia. I come from Chinsali, as I said. At least now when you go to Chinsali, you find a monument. I hope it will be completed. Robert Kapasa Magasa University, and a few other things. Whenever you go, even to Mongo, you find the bridge there. If you go to Eastern, you see the road has been done. If you go to Mfue, that Mfue road was a terrible eyesore, it was like hell run, It was, he linked Zambia, he connected Zambia, he opened up Zambia. He went into this overdrive of making sure that we have farming blocks and all of these things. That man had the passion. To a certain degree, even when we talk about all the debt that people are singing about, we are highly indebted. Clearly, there is so much to point at what President Michael Sata and his predecessor, his successor, President Edgar Lungu, have been able to do with the debt that was contracted. Look at the airports. You know, there's so much to point at. Airport in Ndola, airport in Livingstone, new airport in Lusaka, airport in Kasama. There is so much to point at. PF, in my view, President Michael Sata and President Lungu really had the vision to make Zambia become a nation to talk about. Just like people have been talking about Kagame's country. Okay? And we have been heading in that direction. I do not think that we are going to go in that direction anymore, because I do not see priority for infrastructure in the current administration. But in all honesty, President Michael Chirufya Sata will be remembered for being bold, decisive. Very little was expected from him. Maybe because of his limitations in terms of exposure to education and all of that. But he proved his detractors wrong. He really was a king cobra. And he allowed the technocrats to recommend what should be done. And we are here. Yes, we are paying a heavy price for the debt we contracted, but we're still driving on the roads that debt. And we have hospitals like Levi Mwanawasa Hospital, and all of these things where people can go, or the Chilenje level 1, and Matelo level 1. There is so much to talk about. One, it is that we should be feeling the pinch to pay the debt, but let's have the comfort that there's something to say that's what the debt built.
I've seen you've reviewed Edgar Lungu, but you can continue.
So President Edgar Lungu, look, first of all, he, like President Arabi, was also handed down the presidency on the demise of the predecessor. So he had the foundation laid out for him. And he came with a message that has been misunderstood by many. He said, I do not have a vision of my own. What he was trying to say is, I am continuing on the journey that was started by my president, and will continue. Many people called him names and demonized him and said he's saying he doesn't have a vision. They made it look like it's a campaign message that you are voting for a man who has no vision. No, what he was saying is, I do not have to start all over again. We are on this journey, trajectory of rebuilding the nation, and I'll stay on this journey. And that's where President Lungu stayed, in my view, as an independent observer. President Lungu dropped the ball when he allowed cadres to become way too popular and too powerful that they could intimidate even the police. That is where I really think that the ball was dropped. And I think having had sight of the post-election, post-mortem report of what may have gone wrong within the Patriotic Front. These are things that I've heard even the acting president, Honorable Lubinda, saying, we apologize for this and we regret this happened. I think that at the rate we were going, if only the president had reined in and let the police do their job and put the cadres in their rightful place, President Lungu may have been the president even as we speak. He could have been given back the presidency. But I think a number of people were fatigued and felt intimidated by the cadres. He himself is a good man. He continues to be a good person, a very unifying factor, and that's why he's even unifying Uka today, because it is just his natural gift to bring people together and unify. So he is a good man, but I think he let the ball down to just allow the cadres to go in places where they take over markets and bus stops, and that is really what offended most voters.
President Hakainde Hichilema.
President Hakainde Hichilema, in my view, is one president that was voted with apart from 1991 results of President Chiluba, President Hichilema is one president that was voted with a huge landslide mandate across the nation, not regional vote. He was voted by Zambians from across the country. He came with sweet talk. He knows how to talk. He knows how to convince. But now that he's in office for 2.5 years, everyone is beginning to see that the president does not walk the talk. The president, President Hichilema, if he's ever going to succeed beyond one term, it needs to change from being a rhetorical speaker and become an implementer like Michael Sata. Michael Sata just said, we're going to open the country, and you started seeing things happening. The president keeps saying, we inherited debt, we inherited corruption, and they keep fixing people and flashing people out of the civil service. You do not do that. There's such a very high and unprecedented purge. I have been privileged enough to see the transition from UNIP to MMD, MMD to PF, and now PF to UPND. I am not young. I can clearly see that this is the first time that you are seeing civil service being kicked out almost at every level. And that is not right, because the president must realize and remember that every Zambian, those 2.8 million that voted for him are Zambians, and they're not coming from one region, not from the Zambezi region. They were coming from everywhere. And he cannot hide in the fact that, no, look at my cabinet, you have more Bemba speaking than what. That's besides the point. It is what is happening. Those were already UPND supporters, so they're just getting the dividends of their investment in the party that they supported for such a long time. But it is what you are doing to the police, it is what you are doing to the civil service, it is what you are doing to all of this that is making people begin to realize that the president talks big, but very slim and slender on delivery. That is the challenge that we have with President Hakainde Hichilema. And also the fact that you say one thing and tomorrow you see a totally manifestation and you say, you heard what I said. I don't know, So he would say the rule of law, but you see police doing something else. Why doesn't he censure Mr. Musamba? So there are all of these things that are working against the president. From where I stand as a journalist, as an analyst of what is happening, it will take a miracle if the president does not change for him to see another term of office. President Hichilema, if he's not careful, is going to end up as a one-term president. And here is the reason why. It took 3 years for Zambians to kick out Arabi out of power. What would prevent Zambians to kick out a president who has been in power for 5 years? There is history to point the way. And if the president really wants to survive, let him begin to look at what he promised and let him be sincere. Because there is so much rhetoric of freedom of the speech, freedom of press, and all of this. But what is happening behind the scenes is totally different.
Wonderful. We've had a nice conversation, and I think we've journeyed your life and the life of this country through your lenses. What are your last words, Pastor Kennedy Mambwe?
My last word, Ambassador, to the viewers of this podcast and the listeners, is that, as I have said always, we are Zambians. By the wisdom of God, He created us the way we are. East, west, north, south. Let's stop seeing things through the lenses of politics. Let's begin to see each one of us as Zambians. We will only build this nation when we embrace our diversity and not demonize each other. We need to do that. Secondly, my appeal to every Zambian is that do not be scared to speak out if you think what you are seeing is not correct. Yeah. I am very disturbed as a Zambian to see that people prioritize money other than the nation. As long as what I'm going to say is going to offend those who are in power, even if you're saying the truth, then I will not say it, because they will not appoint me to foreign missions. They will not appoint me to go and monitor elections and as an elections observer. They will not do this. So people have become self-imprisoned so that they can access whatever they think they can access from the political table of expedience. We need to run away from political expedience and let's go back to embracing the spirit of Ubuntu, of one Zambia, one nation, and let's look at each other as brothers and sisters. Let's look at each other as God having given us the privilege to be the ones to develop this nation. It is not the foreigners who are coming to develop this nation. They'll come and steal. And I would like to appeal to our government in power. Be careful what you do. Let it speak for you and let posterity not judge you harshly after your days are done. If you are selling a mine, Mopani for instance, are you selling it with the interest of Zambians at heart? If you are selling Mopani, are you sure you followed the law? Did you take it to parliament? Are you sure what you're doing is right? Are you sure no one will follow you after you leave government and you will not come and cry that I'm being prosecuted? At the moment, the Zambian people have vested their trust in you. Are you doing the right thing?
Oh, wonderful. Today, dear viewers, we were hosting Pastor Kennedy Mambwe, a veteran journalist, as you heard, a pastor, an entrepreneur, a businessman, and I think you learned one or two things. Pastor Mambwe, I'd like to thank you for joining us and for sharing your life with us. And to our dear viewers, until next time, God bless this country. God bless Zambia. God bless you. Shalom, shalom.